Hello, everyone. Welcome to Synergy, and we have a very special guest coming in you're coming in from Arizona, aren't you?
Yes, Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, beautiful. And this is our show on holistic wellness and recovery. Although I'm starting to have a little bit of a problem with the term recovery when it comes to mental illness or addiction, because if recovery was the base and getting back to what I was before, then I'm far different than that.
Yeah.
Recovery would have gotten me to the point of the person who needed drugs and alcohol to begin with. When you detox a person, you get the drugs and alcohol out of their system fairly rapidly and get them on track, and their brain starts healing pretty quickly. But if that's the base of recovery, then I'm still the same person that needed that when I found it. And you're working on a lot of projects. You got a big social network movement going on and stuff like that. I'd like to just find out some origins of the people in the beginning. What can tell me about your life? Tell me about your journey. Tell me about your
Well,
story.
I like what you said about the recovery. Well, and even in the big book, it breaks it down. If we're talking about 12-step recovery in AA, it breaks it down to two parts, right? We get over the obsession compulsion, and then we go into the we start the recovery of the seemingly hopeless state of mind, right? So the obsession compulsion, the medical detox part has to happen first, right? So that first part of chemically detoxing our body, then comes the obsession of the mind, and that's where the disease really lies, right? Because once we take away it's not a problem, it's our poor solution, right? And once we take away our poor solution, we still have all our problems. We have to find a different solution. So, so back to your first question is, where I'm from. Like, I grew up in small town New York, right? Upstate New York, single mom, dad. There, there's some, there were some difficulties as far as my perception and what really happened and what was relayed to me as far as where my dad was and those sort of things. But um, my mom and dad divorced when I was 2, so I was raised by a single mom. And my dad had visitation, and there was a it was a battle between my mom and my dad all the time. So it wasn't like, and then of course we are the wreckage of that battle, right? So it all stems back to our childhood and and our parents, and I just believe that our parents did the best they could, and their choices still wounded us, right? So I have to believe that my mom was doing the best she could. I have to believe my dad was doing the best he could. So I that's how I basically grew up in just small town, and wasn't really an eventful childhood, or there wasn't any big trauma, drama, baby mama situation. It was probably just an absent dad and then an overbearing mom that probably didn't tell the whole story. So I don't know. But again, no lack of love, no lack of um, needs being met as far as food, water, clothes on my back, that kind of thing. Um, and joined the army, went to school, college, then joined the army, got my nursing degree in the army, and was an army nurse. And, up until the age of 40, I was a normal drinker. I drank a glass of wine on special occasions. Um, I would celebrate with friends or celebrate on, when it was appropriate, and to the
Mhm.
degree it was appropriate. It was when alcohol became my solution to my problems. And so I don't know, just, got married because I thought it was the right thing to do. And I did a lot of things that were along the lines of the disease to please, right? So that's where I think my disease started, the disease to please. Like, we are raised to believe that we should be, you know, accommodating and self-sacrificing, and to the degree of we sacrifice ourselves, and we get lost in that. And then where's our happiness? Where's our joy? Where was our cup being filled? Because we are giving it away all the time to please others, to outsource our love, outsource our worth, outsource everything to, I'm not even what I am. I'm not even what you think I am. I'm what I think you think I am. Right. And how lost in the sauce was that? Right. Until I
Yeah,
figured out. Mhm.
that is really I think Karen Horney, psychiatrist, she talked about the pseudo self, and Maslow talks a lot about that as well. As children, you know, we tend to become what we need to get love, belonging, acceptance. So if mommy and daddy don't like Mad Paul when he's stamping around the house and stuff like that, quickly learn to not be angry Paul. Quickly learn to put a smile on my face, quickly learn to disguise my emotions. And as that goes on, you become something else. And even if that false self that you're putting out, that ego, to everyone, is accepted and loved and so on and so forth, for me, I could not really feel it because I knew that wasn't really me. So if they loved me that I was presenting to them, they just didn't know. And if they really knew who I was, then they would throw me down the booby hatch and lock the doors and barricade the building and so forth. But it sounds like I mean, there's certain stages I see in people's recovery. Early recovery versus a bit more of a mature recovery. And Bill W. called AA spiritual kindergarten, because basically the steps will clear out a lot of that anger and fear and wreckage and stuff. And then we've made a decision to turn our will and our lives over the care of our higher power. But what's that mean? What's my higher power? And in the beginning, for me, I was very skeptical. I had prayed plenty growing up, and it didn't stop the dysfunction. It didn't stop the abuse. So I thought, well, there's obviously no God there. And if there was, he was, he's a white beard, long robes, taking notes on, how many times Paul's playing with himself in his room or something,
That's right.
and, he's,
Exactly.
he's just this terrible, terrible, terrible entity, and these rules, that I didn't like very much. I resented, telling me who I can have sex with, don't drink too much, do the right thing, have these values and so forth. But it sounds like, you've come to the point of a lot of forgiveness, when we switch from the victim mindset of, oh, if my parents did this, I'd be this way. Oh, if only this happened, it would be okay. And we get wrapped. I did, not everyone, but I was wrapped in that victim mentality. And it wasn't until I start, when I get to step 4 and 5, and I don't think it's emphasized enough, and he gets more into it in 12 and 12 in the big book, the amount of forgiveness that was wrapped up and enmeshed in those things, and I had to take action for that. My mother was not equipped to be a mother. She was very young. She had mental illness of her own. She had addiction of her own, and so on and so forth. And so there's a lot of injury there of how I was raised and so forth. But even if I had, the beautiful Leave It to Beaver Brady Bunch childhood and so forth, I probably still would have found reasons to resent and everything else because I was all of fear. But it sounds like you've done a lot of that. So how has forgiveness been a part of your process?
Well, you realize that the first person you have to forgive is yourself, because we cannot give away what we do not have. Right. And if I can only forgive you to the degree I can forgive me. Right. And if I can't give away what I don't have, it is in every aspect of life. Like, I can't give you any more money that's in my bank account. Right. That's all I have. That's all I have to give. I can't give you any more love that's in my bank account. I can't give you any more respect than it's in my bank account. I can't give you any more of me or forgiveness or peace or serenity or joy than what is already in my bank account, right? So if I don't grant myself that forgiveness, I can't give it to you. So how do we do that, right? How do we forgive ourselves for everything? Well, we take that moral inventory,
Mhm.
right? And we go through that list and we say, where's my ownership in this? And that's where you step away from being the victim. And that is also where you step away from being the martyr or the hero, right? That's where you own responsibility. And that's where the power is. That's where you find your power. And everything else is up to God, universe, Allah, Buddha, Mother Earth, the divine, the light, whatever you want to call him. The word water will never make you wet. It is the substance, right? And so drink that shit. So whatever you want to call him, I don't care, but surrender the rest to him. So I have to then, what does forgiveness look like to me? Okay, I have to forgive myself for all that shit. I have to make an amends. I can't forgive myself till I've made it right, or made it right to the degree I can make it right. And then going forward, I can then say, okay, I'm able to look back and say, I would not treat a sick person this way. And in all of that, I was sick. And every single one of us are a degree of sick, right? A degree of sickness. And so you have to meet that person where they're at to be able to forgive them. So how do I meet you where you're at? I have to go to a place of love and understanding, right? I have to, because that's where I went for me. I had to go to a place of love and understanding of who I was and who I was becoming. Because going from looking at the ground, ashamed, lost, and broken, to looking someone straight in the eyes, knowing exactly who you are, right? And then that's when you can give somebody else forgiveness, right? Because I've already forgiven myself. The relationship with me is the most difficult relationship I am ever going to have in my whole entire life, because wherever I go, baby, I take me with me, right? Wherever I go, there I am, right? And so then I have to think, okay, how do I love this person right where they're at? And how do I forgive them for whatever they did? I can't make it their responsibility to fix it for me, right? And so I have to love them right where they're at. My mom is a perfect example of that. Like, she is who she is. She's always going to be that person. And I can't expect her to show up any different, even though I'd love for her to show up differently. She's always going to be that person. So how do I love her for who she is? How do I forgive her for all the stuff that led me up to where I was, right? And that I learned from her. Well, I have to be like, okay, well, she was doing the best she could, right? I believe that with every fiber of my being. She was doing the best she could. Was she making mistakes? Yes. Is she, do I see things differently now? Yeah. Well, okay. It's okay. And then I think it's also understanding that forgiveness isn't saying the behavior is okay. It's saying I'm no longer going to let that dirty up my mind anymore. That's not going to take any more space, any rent-free space in my head anymore. I'm going to let it go. Right. And I'm going to let God take care of it. And I'm going to love you because I know God loves you. And I know that you are where you're at, and that's where you are. And is it in my circle? Maybe, maybe not. But I can love you from across the room. I can love you from across the state. I can love you from across the world. Right. But I have to create those healthy boundaries. And so forgiveness for me is about healthy boundaries, loving that person where they're at. And if they don't belong in my circle, they don't belong in my circle. I don't care if you're blood. I don't care who you are. If you are not empowering me, building me up, supporting my dreams, and rooting for me, you're not part of my circle. You're part of my cage. I need to get the hell out. I don't want to be in a cage. So that's what forgiveness looks like for me. It's not letting them rent free space in my head anymore, and loving them where they're at, even if it means that they're not sitting at my table. I think Tupac says it best. Tupac says, just because we're not friends anymore doesn't mean we're enemies. That's not who I am. I still want to see you eat. baby, just not at my table.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that as a meme before, actually. Or that. I don't think that letting people off the hook. It's not letting people off the hook. It's not
Yes,
making them less accountable. It's freeing myself from being owned and so forth. I mean, I actually sat, I'm a little bit of a weirdo. I actually sat with a calculator on my phone one night. I find ways to entertain myself on night shift, and I sat there with the calculator, and I computed at minimum wage how much money did I waste being angry, the all ought to and supposed tos and the ifs and so forth. If only they loved me this way. If only my father was there, and stuff like that. And I figured out at minimum wage, that came to $450,000 of lost productivity time. And that's minimum wage. If I'm alert, if I'm me and I'm creative and stuff like that, I'm not making minimum wage.
right.
I'm doing a little bit better than that. And so and I won't even I could not even bear to sit and look at how much I spent on alcohol and drugs, when it came to opiates and alcohol. That's probably somewhere in the millions. But you mentioned that you drank like a normie until like, and what's funny is because we work in treatment and so forth. And so over the last 3 years, I was seeing a lot more of that than I mean, there's parts of the big book or 12 and 12. I'm at a loss right now for where it is. That I think it's 12 and 12 that talks about people coming in before they had ruined their whole lives and stuff like that. But we weren't seeing as much of that until for in your case, it was before COVID, but now, especially that once COVID happened, I've seen a lot of people that were in functionality that when they shut down the gyms, when they shut down the bars and the restaurants, when they shut down all these things, well, they turned to their one coping source, that they had left, which was usually booze. So seeing a lot of people, was it hard to accept that you had crossed the invisible line after so many years of being able to do it? And what was the vehicle for that, do you think?
Abso-freaking-lutely. Like, because I think I went into the rooms thinking and then let me back up, because it was a year and a half of my drinking. I did more damage in a year and a half than most people do 15, 30 years. So in a year and a half, I went from a normal drinker to a problem drinker to an alcoholic. And it and to the point where I got a super extreme DUI, had to report myself to the board of nursing, had lost a job. I lost my job essentially in 3 months into recovery, but I was on my way to that long before that. Had lost the ability to work from home because I was drinking at home, and then went into the office, was drinking in the office. I was working for an insurance company as a RN medical reviewer, and I when I got that super extreme DUI, and before that, I was having seizures if I didn't drink. Like I was walking down the stairs, and so this is how how much of an allergy I had to it, and how quickly it spiraled out of control. So, it went from a couple margaritas to a couple shots to a shot to get me right, and to stop the shakes. And then walking down the stairs and having a seizure. And I had probably, when I didn't drink enough, I probably could count, probably I had 10 seizures in that span of realizing that, and knowing I'm a nurse and knowing I have a problem, like, oh my gosh, I'm seizing. I fell down the stairs, broke my foot when I was drunk. So, I mean, like, all these things that happen. And then when the super extreme DUI happened, I came home from that, and I tried to get help a couple times in between there. And that's when I realized how broken our system was, and our mental health system, and the understanding of addiction. And so that's why, when I actually got well, it was my purpose driven life to educate and to bring some level of understanding to this disease, especially to medical professionals who are on the front lines of it. Right. But anyway, so when I got home from the super extreme DUI, my codependent relationship with my ex-husband was no longer working because I did everything. And then when I started circling the toilet, he had to step up his game, and he's like, "Oh, I don't like this at all. You're going to have to stop drinking." And he took away all the alcohol. And I remember walking into the bathroom. I had so wasted, and I had drank the last of whatever I had hidden. And he had taken everything else away, taken the keys to my car away, had, basically put me on lockdown. And I remember thinking, oh my God, there is no way I can live life sober. There's no way. And I can only explain it to someone who's actually been through it, or been through the process of, there's no way I can be sober. Like, no human power could restore me to sanity, right? And I walked into the bathroom and I picked up a bottle of rubbing alcohol. And I remember and I'm wasted, and I'm looking at this bottle of rubbing alcohol, and all I'm thinking in this obsessive compulsive brain of mine is, how much of this can I drink and still live? Because I didn't want to die, but I didn't know how to live life sober. And I turned the bottle up.
Yeah, I had been drinking and using from the time I was probably like 12 or 13. So a little bit of a different perspective. And in my 20s, I had 8 years sober, 8 years white knuckle, miserable sobriety. And it was some things, I'll tell people some things got better off the rip. I wasn't getting arrested because I wasn't committing crimes. I could hold a job because I'm not calling out on Mondays and Fridays. I could have a relationship because I'm not showing up at the woman's house after one date, drunk off my ass, serenading her on her lawn. So some things got better, just from putting the substances away.
Mhm.
So at that point, I went to meetings for a short period of time, and then I figured I'll just do the American dream. I'll get all the stuff I want. Oh, American, thank you for your service, by the way, too.
Thank
I'd like
you.
to say that. But, during those 8 years, I thought if I find the right equation for life, I can find happiness. And so I'm a
Yeah.
musician. I went and started playing out. I went back to school. I got my degree. I found a beautiful woman and I married her. We started reproducing. We had a house in the suburbs. I had a decent job. I went back to the gym. I got six-pack abs. I bought an IROC Z because it was the car I wanted when I was 16 years old. And it was always chasing, chasing, chasing the goal. And then you get to the goal and you're like, is that it?
Yeah.
Is that it? And so, I got sick again. I wasn't doing anything for my recovery. And and doctors like, yeah, I can give you some opiates for that. And
Wow.
I don't blame the doctor. I don't scapegoat him. I did not refresh his memory that I'd been through several treatment centers and had problems. He's a human being. He forgot. He gave me a light opiate, and I was primed and ready for that when it came. And but I was trying to fill, you hear a lot of times in the rooms, you'll hear a God-shaped hole. I'm
Yeah.
trying to fill that God-shaped hole with relationships, with spending money, with sex, with
Right.
overeating, with overworking out, any of those things, and never got any satisfaction in that. And what I wanted to ask you, were you always, did you always have faith, or did you, was that challenging when you came in and learned that was actually what the program
Um,
was?
I think I had faith, but it was like, why would when it was what you talked about, it was that God who was watching me do everything wrong, right? And when I was doing everything right, well, then I was worthy. But if I, right, so that disease depletes, like when I'm doing everything right, I'm worthy. But when I'm not, and when I was lost and when I was epically sad, I'm like, where are you now? Why am I so sad? Why, you know, it's trying to achieve the unattainable, right? The perfection that we've been taught in religion, right? There's a big difference between a religious person and a spiritual person. And I think that I had religion and a basis of that in my head when I walked into and what God looked like for me at that time. And now that has evolved and changed. But I think when you hit rock bottom, like we have, and you find a spiritual program. Spirituality is the ocean, where religion is a fishbowl, right? And a religious person, there's so often there's no testimony behind why they're doing what they're doing. It's because it's written, because that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to do the right thing, right? Well, what is the difference between the right thing and a what feels good, a good time and the right thing, right? A good thing and a good time. And I think the difference is, that conscious contact with God, right? But the religious aspect for me was difficult because I had to realize that a religious person so often is afraid to go to hell, where a spiritual person, baby, they've already been there, right? So I already know what hell looks like. It's walking without that surrender, without that faith, without that belief, without that strength, without that conscious contact with God, right? So once I've cleared away the calamity between here and in here, that's my conscience, right? That's my conscious contact with God. He's not outside of me. He is everywhere. He is where. There's a Gospel of St. Thomas that says, the kingdom of God is inside you and all around you, right? Split a piece of wood and I am there. Lift a stone and you will find me. So God is where you look for him, and he's within. You have to go within first, right? So every time you get that pang of this feels right, I should do this, you need to follow that. That's your conscious, that's your conscious contact with God, right? And every time you get a pang that says, this is wrong, right? That's God speaking to you. He's right here. He's right here. And as long as you don't have judgment, drama, trauma, all resentment, pain, all of those things where you drop the rock, right? That rock that sits between you right up here. And that's where the disease is, right? The disease is in my mind. Once I clear away the calamity, I have a direct communication with God. He's right here. He's telling me all the time, right? And so that my spirituality is my foundation. My religion is a fallback when I need a visual on what God looks like for me, right? And so I say when I'm working in people in recovery, I say, I don't care what you call him. I don't care if it's good orderly direction, if it's grand order of design, if it's a group of drunks, if it's a group of drug addicts. I don't care what God means for, like, what that acronym looks for you. But when you actually need to visualize them, because that's the tangibility of our brain wants to fill in all those gaps, all those holes, right? So picture the most powerful force of love and put a face on it. What does that look like for you? Right? And is it Mother Teresa? Is it, I don't care what it is. Is it a beautiful waterfall? Is it Mother Earth, right? Who is it for you that you can actually put a tangible face to it? Is it Jesus Christ? Is it Allah? Is it Buddha? I don't care. I don't care what it looks like for you. I know who he is, because no human power could restore me. So
that's powerful. That's powerful. I think I remember, I'd been in and out of the fellowship for years and years and years, and I'd go in and around here would say that I took it cafeteria style. I did okay. I think I've done those steps. I read them on the wall at the meeting. Those are done.
yeah.
I'm pretty good when I'm not drinking or using drugs. I don't really have anything to work on, and so on and so forth. But by time I got back, I was 48 years old, and and I had tried, I've been failed by medicine, religion, psychiatry, every path I could think of to stay, chemically anesthetized and coast to death. That was basically my goal in the end. Was I would like to find the right equation of chemicals, and then it shouldn't be too long before I just check out. And then eventually, when that didn't go fast enough, I became suicidal. I had a couple of earnest suicide attempts, and so I was always still the devil's advocate, though. I had a sponsor, and he was a pretty humble guy, and he's a religious guy, he's born again Christian, and so on and so forth. And when he started telling me, well, you might want to start praying every day, and do that. I had read the Dawkins, the Enlightenment treatises on atheism. I could argue all day long for that, and and so when he suggested that, I was very rebellious against that and so forth. I pretty much insulted his religion, for one thing. And that gave me a good indication of who this guy was, because even though I said some denigrating things about his religion and so on and so forth, which I don't believe today, um, he just kind of laughed it off. He just
Yeah.
kind of laughed. He had the humility to laugh it off and say, well, what do you got that's better than this? You've tried everything else,
Right.
we here do this, and do we have better lives? Do you believe that we drank like you drank, that we used like you used, and we're better than we were?
Right.
And so I had to, but it was still, my prayer life was very resentful in the beginning. I'd wake up in the morning, and ingrate that I woke up. My night, the prayer I would say at night would be something like, if you could just make me die and not wake up, that would be pretty good. And in the morning, I'd light up my cigarette, and I'd be like, well, I was told to pray, so prayer.
Yeah.
And so, so I was very, very resentful, but I started even before the meditation practice, I started just from doing that daily, I started to see synchronicities, serendipities, stuff that would just line up. And it was just, the exact right person at the exact right time saying the exact right thing, or I was used in another way, I was a conduit and stuff. So, I mean, that eventually evolved into, prayer, which I believe is asking, and then meditation, which I believe is listening. But even more than that, you touched on, if you have a twinge, if you have a twinge. So I didn't even really, I've read a lot of religious texts and stuff now. I'm very interested in that. But even without any of that, if the conduit was, my wife's hiccuping, if the conduit was clear, and I wasn't walking around like a ball of anger and stuff like that, if I did something, I could feel it. If the guy at the
Mhm.
convenience store gave me an extra $10 bill, and I walked away with it and started my justification ritual,
Oh
well, I
God, yeah.
deserve this, life screwed me so many ways, but then, I started realizing, well, yeah, and you sat and thought about that for 4 hours, that maybe that minimum wage guy is going to lose his job and whatnot. I can't do it anymore. What is your discipline look like? Do you meditate daily, pray daily, a lot of meetings?
I do. I probably don't go to as many meetings as I should. And I probably go to one tonight. But it's a daily wake up, okay, the gratitude list for sure. And then going to bed with a meditation on to and a prayer saying, thank you for getting me through the day, right? My sponsor was great in that she had me say the third step prayer all the time. So as I memorized that, and then, then it was, you know, just being this gratitude. Where is God in this, is what she would say all the time. Like, in your decision, ask yourself every day, where is God in this? And as long as I did that, and everything went well. It was when I didn't start the days like that. So my discipline is an attitude of gratitude in the morning. Like, okay, where am I going to start it off right? Like, so is my day going to start off right? And a lot of it has to do with mind, body, spirit, right? Like, not just my spirit, my spirituality. It has to do with what I'm putting in my body every single day, what I'm doing with my body. Am I exercising? Am I putting good food in it? This is the only body I'm getting. And so am I treating it right emotionally? Am I treating it right spiritually? Am I being grateful? And then all of that inside, once I've filled my cup, am I giving it away? Right? Am I sharing my experience, strength, and hope with someone else? Or am I, you know, am I in need of asking for experience, strength, and hope? Like, right when I said to you, I need to go to a meeting tonight. Last night I had a text conversation with my ex-husband, and it's still like rolling around in there. Like, he only has them every other weekend. He somehow thinks that I should have to drive them there now because he doesn't want to drive. I'm like, I said to him, I said, do you even want to be a father? Jesus Christ. Like, I mean, like, and he's like, don't start your crap with me. And I'm like, but for real, like, I have them all week. I've had them for 2 weeks. You haven't seen your children. Like, I would be at your house, And so I'm working through these emotions thinking this is just who he is. I'm expecting him to show up different than. And so I need a little bit more of my spiritual condition. So I need to show up at a meeting and surrender, because I'm trying to, if he would just behave a certain way, my life would work. My kid's life would work, I mean, so like it's this constant realignment. Okay. Like, where I'm going, turning right. I need to be going straight. And as long as I get that ego in check, like, right, it's not my job to make him a dad. Like, I just have to be the best I can be. And God, universe is going to take care of the rest. As long as I do what's within my capability, the universe will take over. And so my discipline every day is recognizing, right? Recognizing where I'm doing good, where I'm actually being spiritually fit. And then recognizing when I'm not spiritually fit or emotionally fit or physically fit, or where I wake up and I don't hop out of bed and go to the gym, or I don't drink a glass of water the minute I wake up. I mean, like, just all of these little things that make my life work, right? That I'm doing that make my life work. The rest I got to turn over. And so it's that accountability, and actually that daily inventory of, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right thing? Is this something that feels good, or is this something that feels right? Am I justifying my resentments? And if I am, and I can't get out of that funk, what do I do about it? Like, now, when I'm not changing, I'm choosing. Right. And so now, that's funk that I'm feeling because of the free space he's renting in my head right now. I need to change that. And how do I do that? Forgiveness, love, and tolerance. Right.
Yeah, it always goes back to the same things. It always goes back to the same thing. Sometimes I gotta tell my sponsor, he's taught me that. I know to go to that. What was affected? Pride. If I say pride first, it's probably 95% gonna be that my pride was affected by something, and
Mhm.
so on and so forth. And I think that 6 and 7 are action steps. I see a lot of not to, I've sat on my judgmental seat plenty, but I mean, even just not being judgmental, but just observing other people's recovery and so on and so forth. Uh, I'll see that, a lot of people have gotten good enough, and that's good enough. And you know what? I will say, hey, it's better than them drinking and driving and killing people and living the life they were living before. But I found that 6 and 7 are action steps, and I kind of I didn't really have to take any action for them. I just kind of prayed to be alerted and so forth when I'm starting to do this, which, you know, is going to happen anyway. I'm going to have a twinge in my stomach. I'm not going to feel good. And, you know, and it's almost like I get a notification, you know, you get a notification if somebody likes your photo or something on social
Mm.
media and whatnot. I almost have like a notification of character defects about to arise, you know, now, which is nice because now my mouth's still closed. You
Right.
know, I haven't said anything to apologize for, and I'm getting an alert that, yeah, probably should continue to keep your mouth closed in these circumstances. But I mean, I did a lot of reprogramming, and a lot of that came from meditation and disputation. During the meditation, if I had made a mistake, I would be like, oh, does that mean I'm an idiot? No, it means you're a human being. Everyone makes mistakes. Try not to repeat that same one again. Forgive yourself and move on. And so I get that a lot in meditation. But, you know, I'm seeing, you know, I'll hear people at fellowship meetings say something like, oh, I've been through the steps twice or three times. Since I've known how to do them, I've been through them. I want to say every day, maybe there's a couple of days where I've taken my will back and so forth. But, you know, one, two, and three are accomplished when I hit my knees in the morning. You know, I've got a problem. Other people have found a way to fix it. And I'm going to try to seek out the will that God has for me and try to be of value and useful to Him today if I can. Then if I encounter a jerk on my commute, well, there we go. I can even take it down to that level. You know, where if I'm starting to give somebody the finger or something like that, it's like, hmm,
Yeah.
need more
Somebody,
patience and more tolerance. So those get accomplished, all of them every day that I have a good day, and sometimes many times have to take charge of the day. If it starts going wrong, I start finding stress and so forth. You know, how I can restart my day from wherever I am and make an apology if necessary, or just look at my behavior. But I mean, we're looking at a lot. You have, you seem to me to be, you know, kind of a 12-step purist, which is not a bad thing at all. And in our industry, though, we're getting pushed a lot towards toward different God, MAT and so on and so forth, which, you know, is the California recovery
Mhm.
and so forth. I mean, what do you, I mean, I think there's an argument for it too. I mean, I've read
Oh,
Gabor Mate recently, you know, and looking at, you know, trying to get less bad than it was. So like, I always had the problem with if people in AA came in and they stopped their drinking, they stopped their cocaine, they stopped the hard drugs, but they were still smoking a little bit of pot, and then no, everyone would ostracize them, you know, and I never did that because, you know, I liked them either way. And so if
mhm.
they wanted to try to do the work while they were still on that, and then my first few months, I was still on MAT. I'd go in, my sponsor didn't tell me, don't get your chip. You know, don't raise your hand when they ask who has a month sober or anything. Just like, go ahead. Don't tell anybody that you're still on the buprenorphine. Just keep staying in recovery. What do you think about all these changes and so on and so forth within our field?
I think in the beginning I was really resistant to it because in my recovery, I was like, I'm just replacing one substance with another. They wanted to put me on Librium, you know, they want to put you on this, that. I'm like, I don't want to take it because now I feel like now I'm on this other crutch, right? And that I don't want any of it in my system. I need all of it out so that I can think clearly. But and in the research I've done, and that, you know, so we're always learning, right? I'm always willing to learn something new. And as a nurse, and I can tell you, I've done a lot of research. There's a great video out there to that helps explain it. Is Neuroscience 101, it's called, and on YouTube.
Mhm.
And it basically talks about the medical side of what that looks like in the disease of addiction. So it talks about our dopamine, which is our happy, right? That's our happy, our motivation, the dopamine is the root of everything. And so, the root of all good, right? The root of everything that goes positive in our life is our dopamine receptors, right? So we need 50 nanometers of dopamine to get out of bed in the morning. And let's pretend that I haven't had a drink of water. So I'm thirsty in 3 days. I am dying of thirst, right? And somebody presents this bottle of water to me. And my dopamine receptors in my omega back in my head go from the size of a pea to the size of a grapefruit, maybe even a watermelon, right? Just me visualizing this. And so that being said, or somebody presenting food when you haven't had food for 2 weeks, it goes to the size of a grapefruit or a basketball or a watermelon. When someone is presented with their drug of choice after not having their drug of choice, their response, their amygdala response goes from a pea to the size of a baseball field. So I am a firm believer in MAT, what keeps you sober, what keeps you safe, right? So until your dopamine receptors can regulate and start delivering the proper amount of dopamine, because when you actually take your drug of choice, you go from that 50 nanometers or whatever that got you out of bed in the morning to what would be normal for us if we got water or food would be probably 200, 300, 400 decibels and nanometers of dopamine. Where our drug of choice takes us is and especially when you're talking about opiates, is like thousands. And then, but when you crash hard, and then you don't even have the 50 to get out of bed. So to regulate your dopamine, it can take the span of probably over a year or sometimes 2 to bring that back into regulation, and your brain and your brain and body be working together to produce the dopamine you need to survive as a normal person without your drug of choice. So I believe that there's the assistance to do that medical assisted treatment, that MAT, to bring you to where you need to be in that 2-year span. Then let's do it. It keeps the needle out of your arm. It keeps the pipe out of your mouth. It keeps, the pill out of your system. So why wouldn't we do it? If we know this is medically proven, if this is medical science and we proved it, why wouldn't we use MAT? Why wouldn't we use every tool in our toolbox to fight this disease? Would you take chemotherapy off the table because it's poison? No. It's one of our first lines of treatment in cancer, right? It's poison, right? Is it good for you? Not at all. Would you give it to a healthy person? Hell to the no, right? But are we taking that tool out of our toolbox? No. Why would we? Right? So I believe that whatever keeps you sober, whatever you have to do to get your dopamine right back where it's supposed to be, so you're living in harmony and alignment. Now, of course, is it a lifelong choice? I don't think so. I think that there should be a plan, right, to cut back. There should be that plan. People don't plan to fail, they fail to plan, right? So there has to be a plan in place. Okay, I'm going to be on this for a year. Then we're going to cut it back to 2 strips a day, or then we're going to cut it back at some point where we are weaning off of it so that we can live our life completely drug-free and dependent on me. But all of those things have to be in regulation first. You don't go from 300 pounds to 150, a healthy individual overnight. That happens over time. And so we don't go from those nanometers of dopamine overnight either. That's over time. And so what do we do in the meantime and in between time? I'll sign on to whatever keeps you sober.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm finding though, with working with people still on Suboxone or Methadone, I don't think they've investigated it fully enough. Because in Rhode Island anyway, there's not enough emphasis toward what you said, a plan to titrate from that and to come off of that and to try full recovery. they'd be happy in many cases, just keep the person on it for forever, because it's good, it's a controlled substance, so you're gonna come for an office visit once a month and get your prescription filled out and so on and so forth. And I've just seen some egregious stuff. I'm not going to mention where I was working, but I've seen it. It's pretty common. Uh, in the recovery field to not give the person, to actually discourage the person from coming off of it. I mean, when I was on methadone for 5 years, and towards the end, I was like, this is not working. I'm still depressed. I am not very productive. I'm losing my creativity. I'm losing what it means to be me. Even that, that shallow idea of me that I had prior to finding a higher power. And I would get told, you're going to die, you're not going to be able to do this, well, I guess we could start reducing the amount, a milligram a week or something for the next 9 years. But the funny enough thing that happened, as soon as I went in, when I finally decided I wanted to be off it, I started saving it up on my own, because I was able to take the methadone home. So I would just reduce it myself a little bit at a time, and I stocked up. And then I went in one day and I go, I got no money.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden it's okay, right?
Oh yeah, they got me off. They were like, we'll rapid detox you off that in 1 week.
Well, and here's what an educated medical professional working with addiction says. They say, okay, what is your wean going to look like? What do you want your wean to look like? And how are we going to bridge you from where you are right now to where you want to be? Like, is it okay? So here are your options. Like, here's your Suboxone. Okay, we can wean you down to 2 strips a day. Let's say you're on 4. We'll wean you down to 2, and then let's take you on a Lucamera bridge, right? Which is another medication, completely non-narcotic, non-controlled.
Mhm.
It's from the family of clonidine, which is an antihypertensive, and so but it doesn't necessarily, the pharma action in it, the pharmacokinetic action is a little bit different. So let's take you from this with the bridge of 14-day Lucamera, take you in a 14-day Lucamera bridge, and then give you a Vivitrol shot for a month and see how you do, right? So then we'll take you the naltrexone and then see how you do after that. And, at any point in that, we can figure things out, how you're doing on that Lucamera bridge. You're off the Suboxone completely, because you have to be off of it completely to go on the Vivitrol, right? So, and then we'll do that once a month Vivitrol for a few months. Or is that how you want it to look? How does that sound? Or do you want to just cold turkey come off? Do you want the Lucamera bridge? Do you want to just see Lucamera for maybe 3 months and see how you do on the Lucamera? If you're having cravings, you take 1 to 4 tablets of the Lucamera. What's the worst thing that can happen? You have to stand slowly because your blood pressure might be off a little bit. You might be a little bit low. Well, so it's all the assessment of how you're feeling. Is this going to work? How quickly do you want to do it? And how do we do it safely? Right. And how do we do it successfully? Not just safely, but the 2 S's, right? Safely, successfully, so that you are living your best life. And so that's what an educated medical professional and addictionologist is going to do, and I work with them every single day. So that's what I see. And I see, okay, let's have a plan, right? Let's roll that plan out and what it looks like. And let's communicate, right? Let's talk about how you're feeling. Is this working? How can we tweak it? What can we add? Do we need to add more meditation? Do we need to add more EMDR? What do we need to do to help you get to where you need to be? Right. And it's not just one answer. It's a myriad of answers, right? It's multifactorial and the treatment. And if you have an educated provider and someone who knows what they're talking about and knows the disease of addiction and has a little compassion, and communication skills, you're going to get where you're going to go. You want something bad enough, you'll find a way. You found a way to get your drugs, right? You found a way to get your alcohol. But people who don't will find an excuse. So you've heard it a million times, but so let's find a way. Let's do whatever we have to do to get you where you want to go. Like, set the goal. God's going to get you whatever path we have to take. Set the goal. So, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to even, what they call day tripping, where you go in and, you have, these micro doses of certain drugs to process your trauma. I don't think you do it on your own. You do it with a licensed professional and work through those trauma, drama, baby mama issues that trigger you, and cause those feelings of like, I don't have any tools in my toolbox to deal with this, and then, reprogram that whole experience. So I think Desmond Tutu said it best. We need to stop pulling people out of the water, and we need to go upstream and figure out why they're falling in, right? And so that's what's so complicated about this disease. We just keep pulling them out of the water. We're not going upstream and figuring out why they're falling in. All those problems that brought you to drink, right? And made that your only solution. How do we, and those 12 steps give you back a new solution, right? New toolbox. But then how do we actually process that trauma, drama, baby mama, right? How do we do that? And what's the best avenue for you? Because it's not a cookie cutter, situation. How you're going to process it isn't going to be the same best scenario for how someone else is going to process it. And so that makes it very difficult for the mental health and medical professional to get together and say, we can't treat everyone the same way. We have to figure out what's the best avenue for care. And that might take a couple of tries, right? So, and that's what makes things so complicated with this disease, because it's not just that.
37. I think I was in 37 different programs through the course of my life. And that's probably one of the most ethical, compassionate answers I've seen. I was just reading In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts by Gabor Mate, and he was talking about that mental health is the poor cousin of healthcare, and that if we're going to look at the cousin that's in the ghetto, that's addiction treatment. So you don't get the kind of answers that you just gave me that often. I mean, I went to myriad doctors, and got the they would never give up. That was pretty good. But they wanted to keep moving around the SSRIs, the mood stabilizers, the lithium, the Depakote, Lamictal, and so forth, to see if they could get a result. And the best that they could promise of that result was, it'll probably be better than you are now, but don't expect too much, and so I never, the SSRIs, I was treatment resistant depression. No matter what they would give me, it didn't work. That was probably a little nocebo on my part. Have you ever heard of nocebo? Nocebo is the opposite of the placebo.
Placebo?
You think it's going to work, and so you have a better result. Well, the nocebo is just automatically going into everything thinking nothing is going to work. So I was already working against them in that manner. So I do think there's many paths to the top of the mountain, though. I'm starting to discover that as well. Especially with unconventional treatments. The last book I read on complex PTSD, especially, the kind, that our veterans have come back with from Afghanistan and Iraq and so on and so forth. There's trials right now. I sent a couple of my clients that were vets to trials in New York City, where they're taking them through 12 guided MDMA trips. Once a week they go in, they sit with someone, they go through the intentions that they want to go through, they play some music, they take them through it. And the number is like 77% well. 77%, are leaving those 12 weeks functional, feeling again, having some control over their self-regulation and so forth. The other, what is it, 77? I'm bad at math.
So
77. So the other 23%
23.
are getting varying levels of success, well, most of them, and then like maybe 0.03, it's bad for them. And
Right.
that immediately, okay, we can't do this. We're gonna have to do tapping, we're gonna have to do EMDR, we're gonna have to do some other types of things. But so that's high 90 percentile of taking them through, and so I'm trying to get certified to be able to take people through that with my letters I'm accumulating after my name and so forth, because the results are incredible. I mean, in Canada, prior to the vilification of LSD, that had gone from an experimental treatment for alcoholism to their standard treatment for alcoholics. And Bill W., had done it, and he thought it was a good idea. Lowered the ego walls, started opening you up to the idea and opening your mind a little bit as a tool. So yeah, I'm definitely interested in those areas, but I think that, and you have another school of thought that said, well, addiction is just a learned process and habit, and that we're no different or anything like that. And there's good arguments for that as well. In immature recovery, I needed it to be, I have a disease and I have no control over this, and so on and so forth. As I've moved on, I realized the only way through is through, and that I had to have a lot of personal responsibility. I had to look at my part in things, and I had to do the work to get better. I was always looking for the easier, softer way. Turns
Right.
out the work was the easier, softer way, to
Yeah.
get comfortable in your skin. So, how much you think, how much I can just tell by talking to you, but, the personal accountability aspect of your recovery.
Oh, it's 100% me, right? So it's 100% me I'm 100% accountable for everything and responsible. So I think I think the big misunderstanding is between fault and responsibility for most people. If people think if it's your fault, then it's your responsibility to fix it, right? Well, no, that's not how it works exactly. Yeah, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. My life, my happiness, my serenity, my peace, my joy, my freaking responsibility all day long. It doesn't matter whose fault it was, right? So it's all about my personal responsibility and accountability all day long. Like, it does not matter. And you hear it all the time. Like, it doesn't matter what other people do. It's how you respond to it, and that sounds so, cliche, right? So it's, you're responsible for your reaction, but you are responsible for your reaction. And so I have to, this personal accountability has to happen. And I have to, my son's asking me to go to work. He goes, can I go to work right now? Yeah, you can go to work. Okay. All right. So it's about, my accountability, my responsibility all the time. And remembering that no one is going to come rescue me from my life. There is no Prince Charming. There is no knight in shining armor. There is no fairy godmother. No one is coming. Right. And so it's this, I'm not going to be a damsel in distress. I am taking back my power. I'm taking back my life. I'm responsible. So, and there is power in that statement, right? We have been taught as children to believe that they're the damsel in distress, like someone needs to come rescue you from life. I mean, how many fairy tales do you know that end that way? And someone comes and rescues the damsel in distress, the princess, the whatever.
And
No,
they
no
live
one's coming.
happily ever after.
Yeah, and they live happily ever after. No one's freaking coming. No one's freaking coming. You need to rescue yourself. So, and it's that's kind of a sad sort of thought process, because we've been taught of all these fairy tales and they all sound so wonderful. But what's more wonderful than brave, being courageous, taking back your responsibility? So I wish those fairy tales existed when I was a kid. These women, powerful women who were, taking back their life, taking back accountability, taking back responsibility. I don't know. I mean, and then it's coming out stronger yet softer, right? Like without that judgment, without that sense of needing to be right. I don't need to be right. I want to be happy. I don't want to be right all the time. I want to be happy. And then I love what you said earlier about, do I need to apologize today? I love some of those days I have to apologize because it right sizes me, right? Like I made a mistake, and here I am owning it. And it's because I am that human being. And, I'm not perfect, and that's okay. And so, it's a lot of that recognition, and that being in that state of being a human being. Sometimes I don't always have to be doing something. I'm not a human doing, right? I'm a human being. Sometimes I just need to be, and be okay, be grateful, be quiet, right? And be listening, right? If you're talking and I'm talking, no one's listening. So when does the listening happen? Sometimes I just need to listen. Sometimes I need to apologize. Sometimes I need to, get on my knees and pray and say, I don't got this, surrender. And then one of the best ways it was explained to me was, I'm not giving in. I'm not giving up. I'm giving over, right? That surrender is giving over. And it sounds so much more peaceful than giving up and giving in, right? I'm giving over. What's not out of my control, I'm giving it over.
I think there's a lot of confusion over the statement powerless. Okay, I'm powerless. That comes in step one. I'm powerless over alcohol. Okay. But working these 12 steps have given me great power in many areas. I like to joke around. I get the power to choose between 35 different kinds of mustard at Walmart when I go in, and so on and so forth. But it's given me great power. And how many kids do you have?
3.
3? I got 3 too. I got 2 girls and a boy. My boys.
How old are they?
30. Ooh, you put me on the spot. 32, 26, and 25.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're grown. Yeah. No, I don't grown.
they're grown, and that has evolved greatly over the last 5 years for me. How's your family life grown and changed? Employing this spiritual program in your life.
You know, in so many different ways, and in good ways, and they're all good ways. There's no bad way. Like I can tell you that the son that just left, he had his struggles, and he came to me and he said, "Mom, will you take me to a meeting?" Because he grew up in the rooms, so he knew what the solution was. And I said, "Yeah." I mean, like my heart broke for him that he was in the place that he needed the program, but my heart was also so grateful that it was there and that he knew where to go. He knew the solution. So, and it was through struggles with his dad and struggles with the divorce and everything else that didn't have tools in his toolbox. And I said, let's go get those tools. Right. And then, he obviously isn't in the program right now, or working a program now, but now he has all the tools beyond the program, like what we talked about just in our little text conversations, beyond the 12 steps. Like, what does that look like? Because once you're done with the 12 steps, you have enough to stay sober, right? But how do you stay happy? How do you stay useful, purposeful? How do you find your purpose? Because you've just now, gotten rid of everything that was bad. You've unlearned everything. So that's when the learning starts, right? So beyond the 12 steps is when you start to learn beyond the program and what that looks like. Because that's not the end, right? If you're not growing, you're dying. We say it all the time. Grow or go. Well, the program is just a piece of that growth, right? And I think so, at least. I mean, some people are happy just where they're at and working their 12 steps and they're good. There's nothing beyond the program for them. That's fine. They got sober and they do their 11, 12, 10, 11, 12 every night, and that they're good with that. But if you haven't found purpose before then, you have to go beyond those 12 steps and say, okay, where am I still growing? Where's my growth process? My son, that one that just left, I gave him Atomic Habits. I said, you need to read this book. When he was struggling, when he was rebelling and doing all kinds of stuff. Yeah, okay, Mom, right? Forcefully read a couple chapters, and I'm like, this isn't working. Forcing him to do it isn't working. I walked in his room, I don't know, it was like a month ago. He's listening to it as he's doing his homework. I'm like, is that Atomic Habits? He goes, yeah. And he says, I'm going to need a ride to work. I think he said tomorrow at 4. He says, are you going to be able to take me? And he said, yeah. I said, yeah, I'll take you. And he says, no, I'm going to need you to say, I'm able to take you to work at 4 tomorrow. That's what Atomic Habits says. You have to set your intention and actually say it out loud. Like, he's actually listening. Not only do he have the book, audiobook going, but he's actually listening to it. So I think my kids they don't listen to what you say. They don't. No. They watch what you do. Right. And so they see me doing the do. And so they know what that looks like. And so it's been this evolution over time of being a good person to doing the right thing, growing, not dying, asking for help when you need it, and receiving of that help, and being humble enough to know that you need it. And so I think it's taught my kids lessons that I could have never taught them winning.
You're really breaking the chains, the reasons, the root issues that even bring about the addiction. My son was 19 when I got sober, and he had watched me try to get sober many times. And I would come home from meetings and I'd start bringing the superficial, oh, first things first, everybody, easy does it. And then he'd watch me go back off the wagon. So at that point, I was talking the talk. I learned how to talk the talk, but I wasn't walking the walk at all. And they knew that. And so like a year sober, really working on stuff, and my kids weren't really very responsive to it and stuff. And so I asked them point blank, I'm like, well, what's happening? And they're like, well, Dad, you're a great liar. You're a great liar. You're an intelligent guy. You can come up with some stories that make us want to believe you. And then they fall apart and they're not true. So we think you could still be full of shit, and so it was nice to hear that. And then, I mean, as nice as it could be, at least I had an answer. They were communicating with me at that point. In the first year, though, my son was still living in the house. My wife and I were on the rocks. We were, she was planning to divorce me. That was on the table. It wasn't coming off. And, my son's walking around the house, stamping his feet, slamming cupboards shut. And he's drinking too much. He's smoking too much weed. He's, and he's starting to play with some harder things on the weekend here and there. And he's not going to listen to anything I have to. Who are you to tell me, junkie? And so what you said, he had to start watching when he would pick a fight with me. I would leave my own house. I keep shoes nearby, so I wouldn't start arguing with him because it never got anywhere. It was never there was never any good purpose to it. We just started getting rageful and saying horrible things to each other. We'd end up apologizing for, but through that, he just stopped. He just kind of put the brakes on it and started going more towards goals and so forth, almost magically. And here's one of the synchronicities. I talk too much, Kim.
Hmm.
Here's one of the synchronicities. I'm watching YouTube. I'm watching the Anunnaki or something, ancient aliens or whatnot. I did a search on ancient Sumeria or something like that on YouTube. And in the video queue, because you do a search and they just keep playing next video, Dr. Bruce Lipton, Biology of Belief comes on. Got nothing to do. It should not be in that search. It comes on and I got really out of shape the first year. I'm starting to get back into it a little bit, but you know, it would have taken me a crunch to reach the remote control. So I'm like, well, let's give this the benefit of the doubt here. And if, maybe it'll be okay. I watched that. It's video on epigenetics, on the power of intention, on, the fact that we have so much more power, law of attraction type of stuff. And I watched that and I realized by that point I was getting a grasp on what came out of my mouth. My son left towels on the bathroom floor. My first thought would be this entitled little so and so and jerk and whatnot, living here rent free, can't even pick. He's 19 years old, can't even pick his towels off the floor. But by the time I'd speak to him, because that was difficult. I'd be like, "Oh, can you please help us out and pick up your towels?" So I could be reasonable by that point. My first thought was always going to terrible things. After I watched that video, I started giving him the benefit of the doubt for anything that he did wrong. I'm like, I love my son. My intentions for my son, even as a flawed human being, or I would love to have a good life, be happy, have a good relationship, a good career, doing things that he wants to do, and so forth. And so I started thinking differently. If he messed something up, oh, one of my cats is trying to join us. If he messed something up, I would be like, well, it was probably just an accident, and so on and so forth. And within 2 weeks of changing how I was thinking about him, he asked me for the reciprocating saw one day. It's like some branches fell in the yard. And if you take the garbage out of reline the garbage can, I'll take the garbage out while I go out. I'm like, who is this? Who is
Yeah.
this? Just
Yeah.
changing my thoughts and my ideas about those things made a change in him. And even to the point, there were some things I didn't argue with. Squeeze the toothpaste tube from the middle. I hated that. Every time I go in the bathroom, I squeeze it from the bottom the right way.
Right. And you're like, damn
And
it, don't they know?
don't they
And
know
then you're
this
like,
is
I
the
gotta
right way to
correct it every
squeeze
time
it
I come
up?
in here.
Yep. I never mentioned that one to him ever because I said this, I could choose my battles. This is way too small to bring up and stuff like that. He started just automatically squeezing it from the bottom. I was
Yep.
like, how, so actually changing, and I know you and I have read a lot of the same books and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So I think there's great power in setting our intention, of thinking the best, of being optimistic, of being grateful, and so
Mhm.
on and so forth. Do you have any favorites in that arena? You mentioned one that I haven't read that your son was reading.
Atomic Habits.
Mhm.
So I like that book because it's this slight change. Like you don't have to change everything. It's these little nanometers of change that you present, and then before you know it, the stacking effect of this huge change, right? And I think it's great for someone who gets overwhelmed very easy, and says, well, if you have 300 pounds to lose, right? That's a lot of weight to lose, right? We're only going to do that like, an ounce at a time, a pound at a time, whatever it is. And these subtle little changes to get where you need to be. And so it's not like you're making drastic changes, you're making subtle changes. What is this? I'm going to cut today. I'm going to cut out butter, no more butter, or, I'm no processed foods, that I'm only going to eat this, or I don't know. It's just we relate everything to diet, exercise, because it's easy. It's an easy analogy to make, but it's every process in our life. So that's a great book. So I think it's a great book for kids to read. I think Power of Now is a great book for the kids to read too. I think there's a kids version, I think, or a easier version for teens or something, or I can't remember, but, and if I can, a perfect example for my daughter, she got her computer taken away. I said, oh, here's 4 books. You have to read these. The Universe Has Your Back, Happy Days, Gabby Bernstein. The Universe Has Your Back is probably one of my favorites, because that's, manifesting things into your life that with ease, and in having fun with it, and just thinking, okay, what would it be like? And it's so great, because when I was reading it, I was getting ready to go out on a date, and I just, kind of gotten to the meat potatoes of this book. I'm getting ready to go out on this date, and I'm almost out of this perfume that I wear, and it's at the time it was Coco Chanel Mademoiselle. I still wear it, but that was my favorite. And it wasn't just Coco Chanel. It wasn't just Chanel. It was Coco Chanel Mademoiselle. And I'm putting it on, and I'm thinking, I'm almost out of it. And I'm walking out the door, because I had to go pick some stuff up before I went on the date. And I'm like, if I'm still dating this guy on Valentine's Day, and it was, I don't know, January or something, I can't remember. If I'm still dating him on Valentine's Day, I'm going to ask him for this perfume. Walk out the door, go run my errands, and then show up at my date. And I've only talked to him on the phone. I've never met him before. He doesn't know what perfume I'm wear. We never had that conversation. And he walks into the restaurant, and he's holding a Chanel bag. And he says, hey, I stopped by the store. I just wanted to get you a little present. And he hands me the bag, and it's my perfume.
My goodness.
What the freak, right?
Mhm.
And so I started using these little tools, and then to manifest these into my life. Well, of course, good things are happening to me. They always happen to me, right? And using those words are power. Words are a clinical manifestation of the conversation going on in your head. And so when I open my mouth, I'm relaying that conversation going on in my head, right? So it has to be this positive mindset, because I'm putting it out into the universe to bring it back to me. So I'm constantly correcting that conscious awareness, right? Of that correction of, if I'm thinking negatively, oh, no, thank you. Thank you for the awareness that I was doing it, so I can correct it. And now how do I infuse that with something more positive? And how do I infuse that with what I want? And when you pull into Costco, and you're like, I always get a good spot in Costco. I always get right up front. And sure as shit, right? Somebody's pulling out, and you're like, there's my spot. Thank you. Thank you, universe. The universe has my back. The universe always has my back, right? So those are some of my favorite books, those manifesting what you want into your life, while manifesting the positive, and then just knowing how powerful my mind is. And it isn't a fluke. It isn't a mistake. When you're thinking about someone and they call you, do you think that that's a coincidence? Oh, my life is full of coincidences then. They're all over the place.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I'm at the point right now where even if something, horrible happens, and it just did at the last place I was employed, so I'm not there anymore. We came to an agreement that it would be better if I didn't work for them. And it was horrible. People lie about me, not even misinterpretation lies, just like outright lies. Like where did that come from? Wow.
Right.
And and then some, a little bit of injustice with the hours I needed for my licensure, and so on and so forth. And through that ordeal, I was grateful. I
Yeah.
was grateful in the, even if I'm like, please just let me go to sleep and forget about the day
Mhm.
and start again tomorrow. But I was still, thank you, because now I'm seeing that trial, those, tribulations, those trials, whatever you want to call them, are probably the answers to a prayer. If I
Always.
ask for wisdom, if I ask for some enlightenment, if I ask for some clarity, or I never ask for this one. I've learned my lesson. I never pray for patience.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I don't pray for patience because it's beach traffic, long lines behind the lotto players at the convenience store and whatnot. I asked for it though. I
Mhm.
asked for it. I could go on forever with you. We've been on for like an hour and 15 minutes. I just, I was gonna have another show. But what's on the horizon for you? What are you doing? What are you? I know you got the soul recovery, and you got
Mhm.
quite a following for that. But you also mentioned possibly a book.
Yeah, so I am writing a book. It's called Beautiful Disaster: How I Turned My Mess into My Message. And so I'm working on, you know, I need to work more on that. I want to work more. I get to work more on that. So um, I'd like to have that probably published by the end of the year. So I need to get moving on that. But it's just a story of what happened. Kind of like the whole what happened, how I was living, what happened, and what I'm doing now. But then there's these 10 chapters of um the 10 rules I live by, right? The ten practices I live by. And so it's, forgiveness is one of them, and what that means to me and how it looks and how it manifests in my life, and how important it is, and the caveats and the you know all of the little things that go into the forgiveness process for me and how I do it on a daily basis. Love, how do I love? How do I unconditionally love? How do I love the perceivingly unlovable? Right? Because that's what
Mhm.
we are, right? So we have to learn to love the perceivingly unlovable. And just all those 10 chapters of what bring serenity, peace, and joy into my life, and how I practice them on a daily basis, and how I come to realize that those are the 10 important fundamental aspects of my life. So that the first chapter is all about me and how I got where I was, and how I got you know to being spiritually fit. Then what the 10 chapters of what keep me spiritually fit. So that's what the book's basic premise is. And so hopefully that will be done. Not hopefully, I will get that done by the end of the year.
There you go.
And published. It's either if I have to self publish it, or however I go about doing it, that needs to be completed. And I'm really hopeful. I have been have you ever watched The Soft White Underbelly with Mark Leda?
No.
Um, so he has a huge YouTube following, and he basically interviews people and has them tell their story, and all different stories, all different walks of life, all different situations. And I am in the process of setting up an interview with him. He has a million, like to the tune of millions of followers. So I'm really excited about that interview. We've been going back and forth with emails, so I'm waiting to see what that looks like to get to LA to get that interview done. And I think that will be um, a great exposure for not only me, but my story, recovery, and my book, and really putting me in a different place to make a difference. And yeah, so I'm hoping that those things happen and pan out and get finished, and I'll just continue doing what I'm doing. I just had education. I do a lot of education for medical professionals. So I just had an education with Banner's a huge conglomerate hospital out here in Arizona, the Banner Network. And so I just had a huge in-service, what they call it, educational in-service on addiction and addiction recovery with their case managers, and talking about resources and talking about telling them a little bit about my story and how I ended up in a Banner ER, and how broken that system was, and how they're on the front to correct it, and how did they do that, and how did they get the resources they need. So just doing those little things are where I'm at right now. Hopefully the next, venture puts me on a bigger platform to make a bigger difference.
I think it will. I think it will. You got a great story, you got a great message, and you're real. You're real. I know whether someone's real because they're on the show. I've asked Russell Brand 3 times to be on my little show with 70 followers. He's on a spiritual path, and I told him in the letter, I said, if it gives me a big following and I make a lot of money off of it, I will give it all to helping addicts. So there's no reason not to do it. But I've been lucky.
I hope he reaches out.
That would be nice. Eric Clapton as well. I reached out to him. But it's the people, I had Michael Cartwright, the co-founder of American Addiction Centers, on the show. I've had several authors. I have you, and so forth. So the content's there. So eventually, I think the following will build. But I think that your message is strong, and it's just holistic and full.
Thank you.
Where a lot of people get to a stage of, I call it big man on campus within the fellowship. They're hail fellow, well met now. They get patted on the back all the time, and they just stay at that location without developing their spirituality further and taking it outside the fellowship and trying to reach the world and so on and so forth. But certain of us aren't satisfied with that. I mean, I'm an addict,
Right?
I actually don't use that terminology to describe myself anymore. I'm in recovery. I'm a member of AA or something like that, because I do believe that words are powerful. But I'm just seeing all kinds of great stuff, and thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for anyone who watches my little recovery program, and hopefully it was helpful.
All right, awesome. Go slay the day. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kimberly. And if you need any help on editing and stuff like that, I got some good resources for you.
Oh yeah, I will reach out when I'm ready for that editing process. Just trust me, I will be reaching out, because that is not something that I'm gonna self-sabotage on.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to end the recording now.